Decals really finish off a miniature, but it turns out there's more to it than just dunking them in water and slapping them on the model. Or at least, so I found out recently. Decaling was a step I always used to rush, but Adam from Dice of War and Christian from Painting Panzers walked me through doing it properly, and it's easy to do and gives a great result. Join me as I take you through the process to get fabulous decals easy. This video is really part of my series preparing for the Operation Burning Front tournament. If you haven't seen that, I recommend you check it out. The series follows building and painting my force for the event. The last video before the tournament touched on decals. I started using my standard technique of just water, but Adam and Christian encouraged me to take it up a notch. Don't worry. The technique I'm describing is simple and doesn't require a lot of additional materials. But first up, why are we doing this? What problems does it solve? First up is silvering. That's an issue with air bubbles being trapped under the clear decal carrier film, creating a visible silver colour under the decal where it should be transparent. Decals can also be shinier than the paint surface, highlighting it's a separate object added to the model and not part of the paint job. The decal carrier film can create a visible edge, outlining the transition from the decal to the painted model. Some decals have thicker carrier film than others. Finally, adhesion can be an issue. The decal might stick okay initially, only to lift and fall off later. Not ideal. This isn't an exhaustive list of decal problems, just the ones we're going to address. So what's the basic decal technique to avoid these problems? Let me outline it quickly. Once your kit is assembled, painted and ready for decals, the first step is to apply gloss varnish. You can spray this or use a brush. This gloss layer creates a smooth surface for decals to stick to, reducing the likelihood of trapped air bubbles, thus avoiding silvering. I keep a cheap brush that I use just for the varnish, and limit the gloss to just where I'm placing the decal on the kit. Gloss varnish is also the step I failed at that stopped me from using this technique previously. Brush painting gloss varnish straight from the bottle can leave brush marks, a texture which remains visible and mars the kit. Turns out the simple breakthrough that made this work for me was to thin the varnish. I'm using an acrylic varnish, and if I thin the varnish with 2 parts water, I can brush on a thin coat with no brush marks. I usually wait 5 minutes for it to dry, and then apply another thin coat. The secret really is to go with thin coats here. You don't want the gloss varnish pooling. That's when you'll get texturing. If you put on too much, just use the brush to suck up the excess. The thin varnish stays workable long enough for you to take your time here. This gloss step doesn't need to create a mirror smooth surface. 2 thin coats of gloss will prepare the surface adequately. Now the surface of the model is glossy, apply the decal. I just soak in water and test until the decal moves on the backing paper. Use water to move it into position, then a paper towel to dab any excess water off. Let the decal dry for a few minutes. Then we're going to seal over the decal with more gloss varnish. This step is exactly the same as the first step, but this time we're sealing the decal under a layer or 2 of thin gloss varnish. Sealing the decal in reduces the visible edge of the carrier film, making the decal look like an integral part of the model's surface. It also protects the decal and stops any wrinkling when applying the final matte varnish coat. Once the gloss sealing coat over the decal is dry, apply a coat of matte varnish. It's best to do this over the entire model. That gives you a consistent surface texture over the entire kit, as well as hiding the gloss of the previous varnish layers and any shine from the decal itself. I use a spray varnish in a rattle can. That makes the dull coat step a quick and easy job. My go-to product for this is Tester's Dull Coat. It really is a great product, both reliable and hard to get wrong. Unfortunately, Testers has been recently acquired by Rust-Oleum and become hard to source in Australia. You might have more luck where you live. But there's plenty of alternatives from manufacturers like Vallejo and Tamiya. Just a tip. If you're choosing Tamiya, get the TS80 matte varnish designed for their TS series lacquer paints, not the PS55 spray from their PS range designed for polycarbonate. The polycarbonate varnish can potentially melt your paint job or even the plastic kit itself. So that's the basic decal process. To recap, it's a gloss varnish base under the decal to avoid silvering. Then once the decal's placed, a thin sealing coat of gloss varnish over it to secure it and hide the edge of the carrier film. Finally, a whole model coat of matte varnish to give an overall matte finish and protect the paintwork. This process will give you a good result without a lot of effort. Of course, if you're placing decals on contoured surfaces, you might need specialist products like Microsol and Microset, but that's out of the scope of this video. Christian from Painting Panzers had a video about techniques to achieve this. I'll include a link in the description below. Do you have a different process? Maybe you can outline it in the comments below. Or maybe you have a suggestion for an alternative to Testers dull coat. Or, better yet, a reliable source to buy it from. Happy decaling! Thanks for watching. See you next time.